Gold medal architect and urban designer Bing Thom once said, if his clients already know the kind of building they want, he is not the right architect for them. He is a man of big design brain who came here from Hong Kong, got his Bachelor of Architecture from UBC and his Master's from Berkeley. His first office was a small on-site trailer. His last project was the new library in Surrey. It is my pleasure to welcome Bing Thom back to Studio 4 with his just-released book, Bing Thom Works. And that you do. You work a lot.
Well, I play too.
Mm-hmm. And that's important, isn't it?
Oh yes, I don't separate the two.
So why this book? Why now?
Well, as you know, we're living in very challenging times. And I thought it was time for a voice about what really counts. Because I think we lived through this period of excess. We got to get back to the fundamentals. So it's a book really for young architects, young students, and people who love architecture.
And what are the fundamentals of architecture? I know the question you have spent your life asking is, what is architecture? So what are the fundamentals to Bing Thom?
Well, I think with every design problem, somebody asks you to do a school. And to answer the question, what is a school, you have to ask the question, what is education? It started with a teacher and a student under a tree. And now we have very complicated buildings for that. So you have to ask, what is the relationship between the teacher and the student under the tree first?
Well, as I was reading through Bing Thom Works, in one of the sections it said that architecture is a fairly young profession.
Yes, it is.
150 years old?
In the name architecture as a profession.
Okay.
Before that, architects were master builders. That's the beginning of the problem. We separated architecture from building, from construction, from finance, from all the logics of how a building comes together. The architect just draws exteriors. That's not architecture.
Okay, and you have always said, often said that a building has to deserve to be built.
Well, yes, because it has its place in society. It's probably the largest of the public art. So if you don't do it well, you're going to offend a lot of people every day.
Every day, because believe me, unless we have a giant earthquake, we see these buildings every day and admire some and don't admire some. When you finish a project, big or little, and you ask yourself, does it have depth? Does it have poetry? Does it have spiritual value? Will it stand the test of time? And you're looking at something you've done. Is it difficult to answer?
Well, the best is ask the users. That's the most enriching experience, because I just came back from Texas where we're doing a college.
Oh, in Fort Worth.
Community college in Fort Worth. And one of the workers came up to me and said, I understand you're the architect. I said, yes. He said, it's fantastic. I said, oh. I said, well, what do you do? He said, I'm just moving in the furniture. He said, but I can tell you, it's made me want to be an architect.
Really?
Well, you know, that's more than any compliment you could have.
That's Tarrant College?
Tarrant College.
Tarrant College in Fort Worth.
College.
Now, it's very hot in Fort Worth.
Very hot.
So as an architect, and you have students who want to walk around and embrace, you know, the campus, really.
Right.
How do you work with that so that kids aren't trapped inside air-conditioned buildings?
Right. In fact, I try to reinvent the definition of what a college could be. I designed a lot of exterior spaces, circulation spaces. All the corridors are not air-conditioned. They're exterior spaces.
Yes.
So you go from the corridor into an air-conditioned classroom, but the corridors are all shaded and they're all naturally ventilated. So a lot of students are actually hanging around outside the classroom between classes. So you want to design those spaces as very comfortable but exterior spaces that people can study and do their own conversation using the natural environment.
I totally get that, because I think that's where great ideas are formed, and the purpose of a university is offering you a place to think and debate.
That's right.
And if you're sitting in a beautiful place,
that's right.
It's conducive.
And to have a conversation with your classmates or your teacher after the class, or before the class, not during the class.
Exactly, because you're not supposed to talk during the class, you're supposed to listen. Now, take me to Washington, D.C., the Arena Stage Project. It's phenomenal, really, but it's one of the finest theaters in America. Molly Smith, artistic director. How did that come together?
Well, they went for an international search of over 100 architects. And in the end, they somehow found me.
Oh, somehow. Gee, I wonder how.
So it was a long process of interviews and discussions. But Molly Smith is a very unusual creative director. She's born in Seattle and did her major work in Alaska. So she was brought into Washington. But when I met her, I asked her, "What's your mission statement?" And she leaned across the table and she said, "No architect has asked me for my mission statement." I said, "Well, I'm asking now." And she said, it was 2 sentences, but it ended with, "All that's deep and dangerous in the American spirit." And I said, "That's what I'm interested in."
Wow. So as you create, you think, as I'm putting this together, all that's deep and dangerous in the American spirit.
Yes. So the building is an expression of that mission statement.
And how do you check that?
Well, through reaction from people.
Okay, reaction from people.
because certainly it's a building unlike any building in Washington, D.C.
How different?
Well, most Washington buildings are kind of rectangular, very kind of standoffish, the symbol of power and strength. This building is very curvaceous. It's very transparent. Transparent in that it's very West Coast. You come in the front door and you see right through the building. Well, Washington buildings, you're not supposed to see through them.
No.
They don't even want you in them. Right?
Well, it doesn't look anything like the White House. I know that. But the large timber construction, which you're so brilliant at doing or designing, is it there?
Oh, yes. In fact, it's the largest wood structure in the nation's capital. They had to rewrite the National Building Code for this city to allow us to build this with huge giant columns. It's kind of my revenge for the timber war we had,
Right, exactly. The softwood lumber dispute.
Right.
So now we have giant timber construction, and you're right, because in the States, many fire laws say you can only build a brick house now. No
That's
more
right.
wooden houses.
That's correct.
And they check the roofs. Does this have a special roof or anything, or is it?
No, it has a very special roof. It's also out of wood in terms of its ceiling. But the whole structure itself has become very popular for the Canadian Embassy. It's an extension of the embassy now.
Wow, so beautiful. And it flows, and it reflects the deep spirit of America, really.
Well, that roof, with that cantilever that points out, it's a salute to the Washington Monument. The Washington Monument is like this, and this building is like that.
Sure, and it doesn't make you want to slide down it. I think so. But the Cradle Theater, is that the Cradle Theater?
Yes,
That's where the Cradle Theater is.
Theater,
so have you had a chance to experience theater within your building? I call it your building, your arena stage. Have you had a chance to go?
Oh, yes, many times.
Many times.
Just came back last week, too.
Really?
From Washington.
And what is that like for you? To sit inside?
Well, it's like visiting one of your children, right? You're watching them grow up. They're changing because the users always change your buildings. And that ironically makes me always very happy.
I'm sure.
Because that means they take ownership. If they're intimidated by the building, then it's not a building I'm very happy with.
Well, acoustically, you're a genius, I know, because I've been to the Chan Center many times. And I know that they have, what do they call them, acousticians?
Yes.
Who come in and assess all that. But if the building isn't right, if the ceilings are too low or something isn't right, it doesn't matter. If you have an acoustician, nothing can happen.
Well, they make mistakes too, So, but unfortunately, everything worked out very well.
Yeah.
They're happy.
Yeah, wow. When we come back, I want to talk to you about the Acadia residents, because a young couple came to you. From Hong Kong, were they?
No, from China.
From China, and said to you, well, you tell me the story, but they said something like, you said, well, what do you want? And they said 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, they said master bedroom and one for each children, the rest is up to you.
Your favorite thing, eh? Because
They're great clients.
I know you
really
don't like clients who come in and say, I want this hall to go that way, and I want a sink over there, and this happening over here, and a plug there.
Yes.
Not your style.
No, they were great clients.
Bing Thom, our guest, a phenomenal book he's put together called Bing Thom Works, along with Michael Heaney,
That's right.
your partner, and a little help from friends.
Right.
We'll come back.